All right, Jamie Hess, welcome to Persistence Playbook.
Thank you, my friend. It's so good to be here.
I know, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk some abundance. I'm excited to talk some gratitude. I'm excited to talk some brands, collaboration. Everyone listening these days is looking to collaborate with those big brands and build their own brand. So I think it's a really important topic right now. But I want to start with abundance. And I think it's something so many of us struggle with. You know, we see other people doing big things and we think to ourselves, like there's not enough to go around. Like if that person is doing that, then maybe there's not enough out there for me to also do something similar to that. And I'm just curious because it's obviously something that you've worked on yourself and you help other people do. How can we build a mindset of abundance?
Oh my God. It's like, first of all, you just have to understand that energy begets energy. One equals one more. There is so enough. And especially when we're talking about the creator economy, it's a $250 billion economy. So when we're talking about brand deals, people keep asking me why do you want to teach other people how to do it? And it's like, I don't need to teach other people how to do it. Like it ain't broke. The model ain't broke. I didn't need to fix it. I'm making plenty of money doing brand deals. I just want to see other people win because the dollars are there. I love the fact that we're in this side hustle economy where people can become independently or additionally wealthy. And that's how I did it. I started working in the corporate life for almost 20 years, but I had this little Instagram that took off, as so often happens these days. And I started to monetize it by doing brand deals. And I realized, eventually my side hustle outpaced my full hustle and I went all in. And a lot of people, including my own mother, were like, are you crazy? You don't leave a six-figure, good paying job with benefits. By the way, I was pregnant. She's like, you don't leave a job with health insurance for something unknown. And I was like, with all due respect, it's going to work out. Thank God it did, right? I never want mom to be right. But the reality is I knew because I believed to my core, there was absolutely no way I was failing. And so it was true. And so, look, I think there's a lot of misconceptions and people kind of poo-poo the idea of manifestation because it's not just as easy as saying, because I say I'm going to manifest it, it's all going to come pouring into my life. But there is an element of showing up with your 2 feet, maybe even before your full psyche believes, and showing up as if, and putting one foot in front of the other, and don't leave before the miracle happens. Because the reality is the space that I teach, specifically brand deals and the creator economy, if you don't believe that there's enough money, then you're just not paying attention. There is enough for me and you and him and her and all of us.
Love it. I love it. And I think that is an important message. And I give you kudos for quitting your job while pregnant. That takes an even extra amount of courage. Forget just quitting your job normally. When you've got a human being that's growing inside of you, and then you're like, okay, now is the time to quit
Yep.
that cushy salary job and go out on my own. I give you a lot of credit for that decision. And, you talked a little bit about, how your Instagram profile kind of took off and, you've got, I think over 200,000 followers last I looked. And what do you think was the key to you being able to build an audience that size?
So I'll back up to the beginning, which was that I was in public relations for 17 years. I had all sorts of clients. I represented big brands like McDonald's, General Motors, Pernod Ricard, LinkedIn, W Hotels Worldwide. But a lot of my favorite brands were health and wellness brands. I represented Barry's Boot Camp and Health Warrior Chia Bars and Tracy Anderson, all these fitness brands. And my husband, now husband, and I were just two fitness geeks. I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not a registered dietitian. I never claimed to be, but we didn't just love fitness. It was like the foundation of our relationship. We have a May December romance. We're 20 years apart. So he's older than me by 20 years, but fitness is such a centerpiece of his life that it kept him young. I mean, he looks better now at 64 than he did when he was 18. So we're 44 and 64. But I think that's why it works, right? Because our premise of our relationship was built on this very youthful, there's nothing more flirtatious than getting through a Barry's boot camp class together, right? And just having fun and throwing each other those sly little smirks and high fives and get it, babe. And it's just such a fun way to date,
I love it. I mean, I've never experienced Barry's boot camp, but I think this is probably some of our men in the audience are taking notes. They're like, oh, okay, I'm going to join Barry's
Yeah.
boot camp so I can date beautiful women that are 20 years younger than me.
I'll tell you something. It didn't hurt him. It didn't hurt. And he ended up proposing to me on a treadmill at Barry's. That was like,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. I mean, there you go.
it
On
was
a
great.
treadmill. So he was on the treadmill next to you.
Yup,
And did he drop to a knee on a very slow setting? Like, how did
right.
this work?
So basically, at the end of our last sprint, which at Barry's, you have like your last sprint session. And then he had arranged it, of course, with the trainer beforehand. And as we turn around to go stretch, the trainer says, okay, everybody to their bench, and George, get down on one knee. And as the words hit my ear, I was like, wait a second, what's going on? As I turned around, like in slow motion, he was on one knee with the ring, which had been in the trainer's pocket. And my family ran in the front door, like they were all waiting there. My mom is TV journalist Joan London. She hosted Good Morning America for almost 20 years. And I think part of our story going a little viral was because she was there, and it was in Page Six, which is the gossip page in the New York Post, and it was all over the place. And so it kind of started our journey as this public facing fit couple, that just did this fun thing. And we went with it. Obviously, I was a publicist. I knew how to build a brand. So when the account started growing organically from that moment, I was like, I think we got something here. Fast forward, we started doing brand deals, and I just knew how, because I had been in PR for so long, and because I was the one writing the briefs for our influencers that we were hiring for McDonald's and W Hotels,
Yeah.
I knew how to transition this I knew what brands wanted. I knew what I would have wanted if an influencer was pitching me. And so I was very quickly able to turn it around and build it into a monetizable platform. But to really answer your question with just one additional sentence, why do I think the account took off? I think because we were truly like raw, real, never claimed to be anything other than two fitness geeks sharing our love of geeking out about wellness trends and like sharing honestly. And we did it with a lot of authenticity, and people, this was the early days of Instagram and blogging, and people really just wanted to follow our life. My account tripled when I had my first pregnancy. People were following the fit pregnancy, and it was just those little sparks of real moments in someone's life that people were enjoying following.
For sure. And I think that really is the key, right? Is just be authentic to who you are. Don't try and make things sound better than they actually are right now. People want to see that journey. They want to see the climb. They don't necessarily need to know that you're already there. They just need to know that you're going somewhere and that you're on a journey. They want to go on that journey with you. So like, let's say like you want to be a thought leader within a space. You don't have to claim to know everything right off the bat. Be like, hey, listen, I'm interested in mindfulness right now. And I'm on this mindfulness journey. I'm learning about mindfulness, and I'm just going to take you along with me on this adventure. I think is a much more authentic place to go with, as opposed to, I think some people come into a thought leadership, Instagram niche, and they think I need to know everything right away. And that's just not the case. And it's not authentic. I think that if we show people we're human, we don't know everything, we're learning as we go the same way they are, the more likely they are to kind of latch onto our brand and want to be a part of it.
I totally agree. And I also think that there's a place and a space for everybody. For me, as things were getting more trendy in wellness and everyone was talking about like crystals and matcha lattes and ashwagandha mushrooms, my followers, my followers run the gamut. They're not just all young, cool it girls who go to SoulCycle. It was also like there was the older population in there that was like, ashwagandha, what? Like that was maybe a little out of touch for them. And so even though I was like a New York blogger, a New York Instagrammer, I kind of talked about things in a little more accessible of a way. I wasn't, it's like there's only so far that most of America is going to go. Not everybody lives in the heart of New York City where you have like your local, like drop-in acupuncture place on every corner. It's like most people live in the real world.
Right.
And so we were sharing about wellness for the real world.
I love it. I love it. And I love that story about you and your husband, him proposing at Barry's. That's so cool. I've seen your husband on your Instagram, and he is shredded to pieces.
Yeah.
I hope I can look that good when I'm in my 60s. That's pretty unbelievable.
It's cool. He works, honestly, like when I say he works really hard at it, I mean, like, I don't mean that even in a vanity way. Like his commitment, he outshines me at every turn. And I mean, I'm like the wellness influencer. I'm putting air quotes for people who are just listening, but he's really the person whose practice I look up to the most because he quietly walks his walk and talks his talk. And that's the best that you could ask for, right? He doesn't even need to share about it. He's just like, he shows up, he does the damn thing. He does a meditation with our kids every morning, a gratitude practice. He never misses a day of a workout. And he just like quietly is disciplined.
I
And
love it.
isn't that the best we could possibly ask for?
For sure. He doesn't have to talk about it either
Nope.
because you will, right? So
That's a good point.
right.
I'm loud enough for both of
Right.
us.
When you're married to an influencer, famous, thought leader, publicist, that you don't really have to do too much talking. You can just
Good
kind of
point.
you can just walk the walk, I think. But it's kind of a reason I've gotten into weight training myself recently, as I see guys in their 50s and their 60s, and it's clear that like if you commit to strength training now, in your 30s and your 40s, you're just going to enjoy your life a lot more when you're in your 60s and your 70s. Like there's just no other way about it. It's just so good for your health, so good for your bone density, for your overall vitality. You mentioned a little bit there about how you know what big brands want. And curious if we could just kind of boil it down to like one or two things. What do big brands look for when they're targeting influencers to work with?
Well, I'm going to rephrase your question a little bit if you don't mind,
Rephrase it on me. I don't mind at all.
because I don't think they're all looking for the right thing, and they don't all know what they're looking for. And I would say that I see a lot of big brands making mistakes of just looking for numbers. Obviously, we've all heard of just hiring. I saw it time and time again as a publicist, hiring the wrong influencers. You would hire like a girly pop fitness influencer that has 5 million followers. Let me ask you a question. If she's famous for her ass, who do you think her followers are?
Right.
Dudes. So if you're a
Dudes.
makeup brand, why are you paying her $50,000 if her followers are dudes? Right. So
Good point.
brands make mistakes. Right. And so what I think it's important for an influencer to do is to be educated enough to also help inform the brands, help the brands make a good decision, and help explain to them why you are that good decision, and know why you are that good decision. So I teach a course called Brand Ninja, where I teach people how to do brand deals to the tune of 5, 6, and 7 figures in the same way that I have. And what I take them through in the curriculum is how to structure a brand deal differently than other people. So what I tend to do, and why I was able to 5x my salary in the first 18 months after I left my corporate job, was because I don't look at brand deals as transactionally as other people might. I was never looking really at the outset for a $5,000 brand deal. I was looking for a $500,000 brand deal. Now, do those come along every day? No, obviously not. Have I gotten them? Absolutely. Will I take a $5,000 brand deal? Yes, but I will also, if I think the brand is qualified to have this conversation, I will also make sure that before we sign anything, I'm getting on a Zoom with them and their leadership team to explain why doing something more robust would be so much more effective for their company, and why creating a red thread of brand ambassadorship through maybe a 6-month bundle where I'm posting over a certain cadence of months, or doing something that's more 360. Maybe you're hiring me to do some sponsored content, but also I'm doing a blog post and a podcast episode about you. And maybe I'm going on TV on your behalf. And those are all scalable brand deals, right? It goes from like 5,000 to 500,000. I'm prepared to have that conversation with the brand to guide them a little bit. Now, that does come from my background as a publicist, but that's also what I'm happy to. That's why finally I realized, you know what? I could package this and teach it to other people, because it's not rocket science. It's just understanding that the influencer landscape now is a little more sophisticated and a little more 360 than what we used to just call SponCon, which is pay for post. And people see through that on the other side of the Instagram window.
Sure.
It's like boring. It's a little boring.
100%. Just curious though, is there like is step one sometimes as upsetting as it might be for some people to build a bit of a following? Like, is there like a baseline number or like on Instagram that people look for? Maybe it's 30,000. I don't know what it is before a brand is really going to consider you.
Great question. The technical answer to that is 10,000 is where you're considering a micro influencer. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what I teach though. So in Brand Ninja, I accept people. I tend to say that the cutoff of where I'll accept somebody is 10,000. However, just because I would never want to enroll someone in the program that I couldn't help. If I don't think I can help you make the money that you've invested in my program back by the time you graduate by securing at least one brand deal, then I'd prefer not to take you on. I want you to be able to make back your investment. That's my promise to people. Now, that said, I would say about 50% of the people who end up taking my program have less than 10,000. But the reason is because I evaluate everybody and I say, okay, wait, you might not have 10,000 followers yet, but are you a thought leader, a keynote speaker, an author, a podcaster? Do you have something else where you're an expert in your field? Are you a doctor who has the ear of your community? Are you a speaker who's maybe going on stage next week to talk to the National Association of Doctors or of Nurses? Do you not think there's a healthcare brand that would want to be a part of that journey with that person, even if they only had 6,000 followers on Instagram? I guarantee you, Brett, that there is. And I can help them pitch that and help them understand how to pitch that. So my point in kind of giving you this vague answer is, again, there's the brand that's always going to look at things in just a very formulaic, metrics driven sense. 10,000 followers is the cutoff. We allocate this much budget for micro influencers, this much budget for mid range, and this much budget for like our bigger celebrity influencers. And then there's the brands that put on their thinking cap and they're like, how could we get in with somebody that maybe gives us like a unique way in, a more niche audience? And so I'm really keen to help those people as well in Brand Ninja and what I teach, because I think that there's a place out there for those people to be making a lot of money. And I think they're leaving a lot of money on the table because they don't think of themselves as influencers.
Got it. And that makes a lot of sense to me, right? If you've got any type of audience, whether it's a podcast or maybe you work the conference circuit, you've still got an audience. Maybe it doesn't equate to 10,000 Instagram followers, but it could still be something that is ultimately beneficial to a brand. Now, let's say like there's a new creator out there and they're looking to build their own brands, but they're not exactly sure like what niche to go with. What would your advice be to someone like that? Is it super important to choose that really like specific niche early on, or should you kind of dabble in a few things and feel what's right before you get laser focused on that specific niche?
You should get laser focused first, and then you can pan out. And the reason is because people just need to understand who you are. And at the very least, your social media feed, whether it's Instagram, TikTok is a little less curated, obviously, but Instagram, and I'll talk about Instagram because that's where I tend to live. Obviously, different platforms operate a little bit differently. Your feed should look at least aligned. Your captions should not look crazy. Like one day it's like a novel and the next day it's like lunch with mom, right?
Right.
Or like, taking like, Fido for a walk. It should be, if you write a caption that's, inspirational or entrepreneurial in purpose, it should be that more or less day in and day out. And I'll give you an example. I might post a picture of me taking my son to Little League on a Saturday, but the caption might say, as I think about work-life balance and what it means to be an entrepreneur and also a mom, I treasure these moments. Da, 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 da. So I'm still tying it back to the fact that by and large, my feed talks about me as an entrepreneur, a mindset coach, a wellness expert, a media personality, but also I'm a mom, right? But it's not just going to say, congrats on the Unionville, Little League team for getting the championship. It's going to say like, I'm using this to tell you a story about my main objective here. I think it's very important. Look, not everybody has to use Instagram that way, but if you want to make your Instagram a brand, then you have to position it like a brand, which includes a look and feel and a tone.
I agree. I think that the feed posts, especially in Reels, should all tie back to your mission, should all tie back to that problem you're solving. Maybe with stories, you can be a little bit, looser with that and just kind of show your personal life for the sake of showing your personal life. But feed posts in particular, totally agree. It's all got to, connect back to that mission. And, I'm just kind of curious as to, when we're talking about, we're working with big brands and things of that nature, like let's say we found a brand that we think is a good fit to work with us as an influencer, as a creator. What is that first step? Who do we reach out to? Who do we extend that olive branch to start that back and forth communication?
Great question. So that's week 2 in my curriculum. So I'll back up to week 1, which is like, you need to have a media kit is not necessarily as necessary as it used to be. That really kind of, I do encourage people to do a small media kit, but you don't need to go nuts over it, because it really, that harkens back to the blogger days when our metrics weren't front facing.
Okay.
Now people can, you should be able to tell them things in a media kit, but they can also just look at your followers. They can
Right.
look at your engagement.
It's not a secret. You can
It's front
find
facing,
it.
right?
It's right there.
Yeah. So you want to have something to send them about the who you are, and you want to have what it is that you're offering, right? So like a little bit about, like, you need to understand what you're wanting to charge and what the deliverables are. All of that said, finding the gatekeepers at brands, it's funny. People always want me to have some big secret, like, oh, I use this software and I use this platform and I get all the insider. A lot of the times, Brett, I will slide into a brand's DMs. I will go the old-fashioned way. What's that?
That's wild. That was not what I was expecting. I'll be honest.
I will roll up my sleeves, because a little bit of elbow grease. Look, I come from the PR world.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Like, we're nimble. Like, we're in the trenches, and sometimes it's just about doing things a little bit in the trenches. I will reach out to a brand in their DMs for the sole reason that allows them. If I'm pitching myself on Instagram and I reach out on Instagram, that removes a whole step. Sure. They can click right back to me and see what it is that I'm selling, essentially. And then I'll usually say, hey, would you mind giving me the best marketing contact? I'd love to send you an email with some more information, or what it is that I was thinking of as far as a collaboration. All of that said, like, my lists are my gospel. I keep my lists like a crazy person. I go to all the trade shows, like in my niche. I'll go to the healthy eating, the clean food trade shows. I make it a big part of my job, to be in the places where brands are. I want to learn about what's hot on. I can't claim to be somebody who's out there testing new products and bringing you the latest and greatest if I'm not testing new products and bringing you the latest and greatest. Like,
for sure.
I don't just sit in my house and eat bonbons and wait for brands to email me as if somehow that should make me an expert. You know what I mean? You got to be out there literally doing the research and understanding. So I go to events that brands invite me to. I even go, I told a story the other day on my Instagram about, I was in Maine a couple summers ago for a family trip. And I found out that the HQ of one of the brands that I really loved, like a health food bar, snack bar, that they were just like about an hour away from where I was going to be staying. And I reached out to their leadership and I was like, hey, could I come see your plant? Like, could I bring my kiddo and like, we'd love to come support you and just see where the magic is made. And they were like, yeah. And that, they're not in New York City or LA. So they're like, people aren't like visiting them all the time.
They're like, come on down. That sounds like a nice little afternoon.
Yeah, it meant the world to them. And I was so happy to do it, because like, when I say that I'm a wellness geek, I geek out on my brands. I was super excited about how it was made and the sustainable packaging. And I wanted to meet, the owner was this cool hippie, and I was like, right on. Like, if it's really not of interest to you how brands do what brands do, you probably shouldn't be doing brand deals. Like, if you genuinely don't care, it's going to come through.
And I think that's a good piece of information for other aspiring thought leaders out there is whatever niche you're choosing, whatever problem you're trying to solve, whatever direction you're choosing, make sure it's an area that really just interests you intrinsically and something that you geek out about with your friends when you're not on camera and when there's not a microphone in front of your face, right? If you want to be a mindfulness thought leader, then you better be reading, a couple of books on mindfulness every quarter. And it better be something that you were going to do anyway, because it's an interest. It's an intrinsic interest for you, kind of like you just said you're a health food geek. This is something that you're just into, regardless if it's for Instagram or not, you'd be into it anyway. I think that that's a big part of being a successful thought leader, is like consistently learning within your niche. Like you said, consistently trying out these products so you can bring your fan base the best and greatest. You've got to be in there. If you really want to lead people within a niche or within a category, you've got to be consistently educating yourself within that category. I think that's a really solid point.
Absolutely. And you have to know what you think. So for instance, like, I started out as a wellness influencer, but as I evolved, I realized that wellness to me is radical wellness. So it's it's everything. It's financial wellness, it's time management, right? Like it's sleep hygiene. And so I was able to add all of those brands into my repertoire of brands that I wanted to work with, because what does wellness even mean to me? It started out as fitness. I was like a fitness influencer. But as I became like a busy mom, look, I still work out, but I'm not doing like, I used to go from Barry's boot camp to Soul Cycle to yoga to like in one day. Like I was one of those crazy New Yorkers that like
That's a
did
lot.
every boutique fitness class in one day. It's like, ain't nobody got time for that anymore. And so like I can evolve, and my platform can evolve. And like wellness to me these days might mean a great diaper that keeps my kid from getting diaper rash, because that keeps our family sane and happy and well. So I have to know what my niche even means to me so I can help it mean something to you.
For sure. But you started out kind of narrow, right? You were just about fitness, and then you expanded. And I think so many of us, we want to jump that step. We want to leap over that niche step and be like, I just want to talk about everything. I want people to go to me for fitness advice, for financial advice, for business advice, for relationship advice. And you can't just go right to being Ed Milet. You can't go straight to being Gary Vee. You can't be Tony Robbins right off the bat, right? All those thought leaders started within a niche. Gary Vee started out talking about wine. I mean,
Really?
Tony Robbins was talking about neuro-linguistic programming for years before he started to expand his repertoire. So important to really dial in on that niche for a few years before you start to expand what you speak about to your audience. Because it's going to be a lot easier to build an audience if you start really honed in on what your expertise is. I want to talk a little bit about gratitude. Gratitudeology, right? That is your slogan there. It's your keynote, and I want to just talk about gratitude in general. And why are you so passionate about gratitude?
So here's my fun little mic drop moment that I always love to kind of wiggle in there, which is that
Wiggle it
I
in.
was, what's that?
Wiggle it in there.
I'll
Throw it
wiggle
in.
it right in there, which is that I was a sick and suffering drug addict for many years. I started my life as an addict and alcoholic in my teens and 20s, and it damn near killed me, like truthfully. Um, that said, when I got sober, I had one of those like Mel Robbins moments where I'm like, no one's coming. Like, no one's coming to save you.
Right.
You better get yourself out of this. And when I got sober, getting sober, they kind of say that like sobriety is like, or addiction is the one disease that once you're in remission, you end up better off than you were when you started. Like when you go into remission from cancer, you just no longer have cancer. But when you get sober, I mean, all of this stuff, gratitude, having a prayer and meditation practice, all of these things you learn in recovery, that was news to me. I like never, they're like, you have to start like prayer and meditation. I'm like, to whom? Like, most people don't go into 12-step recovery like going to church every Sunday. Like I was a little busy being hungover or still awake from the club. So um I had none of that in my life. I learned all of that in recovery. Gratitude became the underpinning for my, I believe an attitude of gratitude is the heartbeat of happiness. And I learned that in recovery circles. That said, I also believe that it's the reason I'm successful. And it's because I have a girlfriend who will remain nameless. We're no longer girlfriends, but we used to work together on a project. And I took note that every time we would get on a Zoom, it was like, hey girl, how you doing? And it's like, oh, well, and it was like about the husband and about the kids and about the this and about the that. And like, we both had a relatively similar situation. Like we were both married, blessed to be married with kids and, a roof over our head and good business that we were doing. And I couldn't help but think like, that is a damn choice, man. Every single day, that is a choice that she's making to be miserable. Where this, to be honest, she was living in like opulence. And to be honest, people who are brought up with wealth, as she was, sometimes have it very hard because they do not have the opportunity to
Sure.
see gratitude. And honestly, I think it's robbed from them. So I almost feel for her. Like I feel like someone robbed her of this chip in her brain that could have helped her be really happy because she like just doesn't get it. And I ended up dissolving the friendship because I'm like, you're just a drag. You're an energy suck. And like low vibes, low vibes. But what it
Gotta
made me
go.
realize was, wow, that is really what I attribute to my happiness. My husband and I, when we met, We lived in a studio apartment for the whole beginning of our relationship, the two of us and my dog, and he worked from home. And we were the happiest MFers you'll ever meet.
Sure.
We have now built this whole life together where we definitely do not live in a studio apartment anymore. We live in this beautiful life that we've created for ourselves. But Brett, if we lost it all tomorrow and we went back to that studio apartment, I promise you, we would be just as happy. And it's because we wake up every day and we elbow each other and we're like, can you believe this? Can you believe this life? And it's not based on the house with the sauna and the cold plunge. It's not based on the cars in the driveway. It's based on this deep rooted sense of gratitude that has rewired our brain. We're both sober, by the way, which is why we both have this as very much top of mind. Because you do get that in recovery circles. It's something you focus on. So I trademarked the word gratitudeology, and essentially it's the study and practice of gratitude, but I kind of took it on as like a research project. And I launched my podcast, which is called the Gratitudeology Podcast. And I interview the top celebrities, thought leaders, 8 and 9 figure entrepreneurs about what was that moment when the switch flipped for you and you started seeing life through a lens of gratitude, and how did that then fuel your success going forward? Like, tell me that story and bring me on that journey. And that's what I do now.
What does your specific gratitude practice look like? Is it just something internally that you try and say, I am grateful for this a few times a day inside your own mind? Is it a journaling practice? Like, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis for you?
I hate liars. So I would never be like, Brett, every morning I put my quill in the ink and I just start doodling my gratitude list. Like, I don't. We do have a gratitude practice with our kids, which I really recommend. And a lot of people are like, my kids would never sit still. Yes, they will. They will. Don't overdo it. We do a 2-minute meditation with frequencies, with sound frequencies. We do 2-minute meditation, 2-minute gratitude, and then 2-minute affirmations. So we say the 2 minutes, basically they say 3 things they're grateful for. And then we go around and they say 3 affirmations. Like, I am strong. I am a helper. Whatever they feel like they want to say that day.
Sure.
That alone, right? It could take 6 minutes and it will rewire your family's brain. The thing that I do luckily have, even though I'm not perfect about gratitude journaling, which, by the way, like, who cares, right? That's also gratitude done in a vacuum and it's a little performative. Where my gratitude practice comes in handy the most is at all the points throughout the day. Because what I want to be clear on is, just because I'm a quote unquote expert in gratitude and speak on it on stages across the country, I wake up the same way as everybody else. 1 foot out of bed, 2 foot out of bed, anxiety, right? Like walk to the bathroom, look in the mirror, imposter syndrome, like same thing as everybody else. But what I have that's different now is this intuitive switch that immediately says, like, that turns it around, that refuses to let myself stew in negative self-talk. And if I go there, I immediately combat it with positive affirmations. Like, I am my own biggest hype man. I have these little, I usually have one sitting right here. I have these little neon cards all over my office because I like to put pen to paper. It's how my brain absorbs information best. So I have these little like index cards that I, just write my speeches on, but I'll pull one out and I'll just write on it before like a big call if I need to get some confidence. I am a baller. I am a hustler. I am smart. I am abundant AF. Whatever I need to tell myself in that moment. And by saying it out loud and by repeating it to yourself, I'll do it on the way to the gym. 6 o'clock in the morning, my brain wants to say, I can't, I won't, I'm too tired, you can't do it. And I will turn the music down and I will turn my voice up and just start talking to myself. You are strong, you are powerful, you have got this, you can do it. And this is a small skill that solves a very large problem in my life. So I always say gratitude is a soft solution to a hard problem. The hard problem is anxiety, it's overwhelm, it's procrastination, it's self-doubt. Oftentimes when I'm selling my speech into the buyer, who would be like an event planner at a company or someone like that, they hear gratitude and they're like, oh, like it's so woo-woo. And I'm like, okay, let me ask you a question. I know leaders don't get up every day thinking, I wish my workforce was more grateful. But do you get up every day wishing your workforce was more engaged, was more profitable, had less turnover, had better well-being, less anxiety? Because that's what this solves for, is all of those things. It's a mindset optimization technique that's highly underrated.
Be your own hype man. I like that. And I think there is something very powerful about flipping that switch early in the morning too, right? You're in those alpha brain wave state first thing in the morning. And if you can kind of flip the switch on that negativity first thing to a state of gratitude, then that's going to really affect the way that you attack the entire day. And I think that science says that it takes 2 or 3 positive affirmations to kind of counteract a negative thought. So we just got to be mindful of those negative thoughts because they're not going away. They're going to keep popping up today, tomorrow, and for the rest of our lives. But when they pop up, let's counteract it. Let's be our own hype man, and let's give ourselves 2 or 3 positive affirmations so that we can feel good about ourselves again. And it's so true. We all wake up, right, feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, maybe a little bit of resistance to that work that's in front of us. I mean, that's just the human experience, but we got to be our own hype man in those moments. And that's just a habit. That really is just a habit that we can start ingraining today, build on tomorrow, and as time goes on. And the more that we can instill that belief in ourselves by saying, yes, you are a badass, like you are an absolute baller and you got this. The more we can say that to ourselves with emotion, the more we're going to believe it and the more we're going to see it come out in our lives. Have you always been such a hard worker? This is a question that we go over here a lot on Persistence Playbook. I'm curious, have you always been a hustler, or has this been something that you've kind of built throughout your life?
I love that question. It's funny. I don't give myself a lot of credit for the time when I was a drug addict, but honestly, I think that contributed a lot. Do you know how much you have to overcome when people really like don't understand the grind that you put yourself through? Also, when you're trying to be a high performing addict, like you're an addict and you're hiding it and you're like building your career, because that's what I lived through in the beginning. And I almost think that set me up like for a lot of it, because it's like, dude, if I can do it in that state, right? But the
right. If I
reality
can do anything in that state, I can do this in a pure, crystal clear mind.
I do think it's a bit of a gift. I do think it's something that you can train into yourself, a mindset technique that you can train into yourself. But I do think that ambition is a gift. My husband and I both geek out on business together too. So like, our like pillow talk, this may not seem super romantic and sexy, but I promise we have a spicy life. But we'll lay in bed and just get like all like jazzed up on like business plans, and I'll help him with his stuff and he helps me with mine. And, we love it, and it's exciting and it's fun. And I think that again, that's a choice, right? Like you choose every day, like you either have to go to work or you get to go to work. And if you do what you love, obviously it's like the age old adage, you don't work a day in your life, but I jump out of bed every morning, just excited to build success, to show my kids that this is a gift, not a chore, all of it, and I do think that working hard is really fun. I really do. And so if anything, as an entrepreneur, I've had to train myself out of doing it all myself. I've had to learn how to delegate because I want to be the person doing it all. And I think that's a very like big newbie entrepreneurial mistake, is to not delegate and to try to do everything yourself. So I'm in my season of trying to do a little bit less, because, if it were up to me, I would just work like 24/7, but not because I'm a stressed out, work monster, just because I really I love it. I love what I do, and it makes me feel alive. It fills my cup.
I mean, it kind of sounds like gratitude is really at the core of your ability to continue doing hard things, continue striving towards your goals, which I love. And I think we can all take a little bit from that, right? It's tougher to keep putting one foot in front of the other when you wish you were already there. You wish you were already on that mountaintop. But if we're just kind of grateful for where we are right now, to be in this journey, to be in the thick of the fight, then I think we're going to be able to find much more energy to put that one foot in front of the other and continue climbing that mountain. Be gratitude, be grateful for what you have in this moment. Be grateful for the journey you're on. Even if you're not there yet, it's okay. You might get there, you might not. The important part is you're going towards it and you're doing your best. And that's all we can do.
Amen. One foot in front of the other. You can only do one thing at a time for the most part. And that's almost my biggest tip for just mitigating that daily anxiety that we all live in is, if you have 10 things to do, just try doing one. And that's what I remind myself every single day, because as somebody who lives in that constant whirl of ADD, anxiety, condition of postmodernity, 25 tabs open, one is playing music, I don't know which one, it's like my brain feels like my computer screen. But I can always bring it back to, I'm grateful to have this much work. I understand that it feels overwhelming, but I can just start by taking on one task. And that is how I keep myself out of the vortex.
I love it. And I'm grateful for this task, right? Right. That little mindset
Yeah.
switch. I get to do this work. Not everyone does. It's not I have to. At the end of the day, the work that we do is a choice. It really is. That job you go to is a choice. That business you started it is a choice. And we all are very fortunate to get to do the work that we do. Jamie, thank you for being with us today. This was awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate you, and your listeners can find me on Instagram. I'm at Jamie Hess, and they can also find me at coachjamiehess.com and reach out if you're interested in working with me.
There it is. Thank you for being with us, Jamie. Thank you for everyone out there listening. This has been Persistence Playbook, and this is your weekly reminder that you will feel resistance to the work that you know you should be doing this week. In those moments, remember your why and take action anyway. We'll see you next week.